First Secretary Atsushi Murata and representatives of the Japanese missions across Canada, Faven, Gregory, candidates of the Kakehashi Young Leaders Program, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon, bonsoir, ohayo gozaimasu. Welcome to the Asia Pacific Foundation of Canada's virtual session with nominees of the Young Leaders Kakehashi Program 2021. My name is Christine Nakamura, Vice President of the Asia Pacific Foundation of Canada's Toronto office, and delighted to open tonight's event. Before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge that while we are all meeting in a global digital space, the places Canadians call home are the traditional territories of many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples. For the benefit of our Japanese participants, a land acknowledgement is a formal statement that recognizes and respects Indigenous peoples as traditional stewards of our land and the enduring relationship that exists between Indigenous peoples and their traditional territories. Tonight, we're broadcasting from Toronto on the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabeg, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples. I'd like to begin by congratulating all of you for being nominated for the Japan-Canada Kakehashi Young Leaders Program. If it wasn't for the pandemic and the imposition of travel restrictions, many of you would be getting ready today to board a plane to Japan to meet and conduct exchanges in person. But like all initiatives involving international travel, the execution of the Kakehashi project has been severely limited for the past 18 months. While the Delta variant is wreaking havoc to nations around the globe, I remain an optimist. My hope is that we will reach an acceptable level of vaccinations in the near future to enable international travel once again. But thanks to technologies developed since the beginning of the pandemic, we have been able to at least partially satisfy our human need to remain socially and professionally connected, albeit virtually, with our colleagues, friends, and family. While Zoom and other platforms have enabled gatherings which are next best to meeting in person, I'm sure that most people are longing to meet in person and get that occasional hug. But for now, we'll have to settle for the virtual format. Today's session is being recorded for internal purposes. However, should we decide to post parts of this session publicly on our websites, we will seek your permission in advance. Before I hand over the mic to Sean Jones, Asia Pacific Foundation of Canada's Program Manager of the Kakehashi Project, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the Embassy of Japan in Ottawa, the Japanese Consulates General in Montreal, Toronto, Calgary, and Vancouver, as well as Japan's Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Tokyo, for their generous contributions and support to make the Japan-Canada Kakehashi project possible. And to the staff at JICE, our Japan program implementers, for participating in today's virtual event. Now, I'd like to invite Sean Jones, who has worked tirelessly over the summer months to organize the many Kakehashi webinar events this month, to speak to you a bit about the Kakehashi project. Over to you, Sean.
Thank you, Christine. It's nice to see everybody here. Thank you so much for joining us. I'd like to give just a very quick overview of the program. So as you probably know, the Kakehashi project is a very generous annual program sponsored by Japan's Ministry of Foreign Affairs. We call it MOFA for short. It's the North American portion of Japan's Friendship Ties programs, which are people-to-people exchange programs between Japan and other nations. Every year, groups of selected high school and university students, as well as young business and community leaders, are invited to visit Japan for an all-expenses-paid 8-day program tour packed with experiences not available to the typical tourist traveling to Japan. The word Kakehashi itself means bridge. which symbolizes the lasting relationships built between the Japanese and non-Japanese participants and the figurative bridges the participants become between the two countries. The program has 4 main objectives, as you can see. The first, to promote trust and understanding between the people of Japan and Canada, building a basis for friendship and cooperation. To increase global understanding of Japan's economy, society, history, diverse culture, politics, and foreign policy. To spark engagement between the youth and young adults of Japan and Canada, to inspire young leaders and scholars to contribute to the development of Japan and Canada's diplomatic, cultural, and economic relationships, and to broaden the network of interest in Japan as a destination for travel and study. So a little bit of background on the program. The first exchanges took place in 2013 and between Canada and Japan. The program was expanded in 2015 to include young professionals and community leaders. To date, the Japan-Canada Kakehashi project has allowed over 1,100 students and young professionals to travel between Canada and Japan, including 740 Canadians. To date, Canadian Kakehashi participants have visited various locations in Japan, such as Tokyo, Sapporo, Sendai, Nara, Mito, Osaka, Kyoto, Fukuoka, etc. And participants have visited over 10 Japanese prefectures and 5 Canadian provinces. In terms of the organizational structure, so the funding and oversight for the program is provided by MOFA in Japan, with local program oversight provided by Japan's 5 diplomatic missions in Canada, which would be the embassy in Ottawa, the consulates in Vancouver, Calgary, Toronto, and Montreal. And APF Canada is responsible for program delivery in Canada. We're the point of contact for Canadian participants. We book all international travel. We handle all pre and post travel arrangements. And we make all arrangements for the inbound participants from Japan, including accommodations, meals, and all of the event programming. APF Canada subcontracts implementation of the program in Japan to JICE, the Japan International Cooperation Center, an agency contracted by government and private agencies for projects such as international training courses, international youth exchanges, and translation. And JICE handles the program delivery in Japan, such as domestic transportation, accommodations, and meals. They're the ones who'll be accompanying you when you travel to Japan. So each year, Kakehashi offers a select group of people a unique experience of Japan. And I'd like to congratulate you all, as well as Christine, on being nominated to join this wonderful program. One thing we ask is that you share information about your participation in the Kakehashi project and its activities with your networks, especially through social media, using the hashtag Kakehashi. There'll be more information at the end of the event today. There'll be a slide for you. This is important for the sustainability of the program and helps to ensure that we can continue to offer this program into the future. So thanks so much for your attention today. And please reach out to me after the event if you have any questions. So next, I would like to ask Mr. Atsushi Murata, who is First Secretary at the Embassy of Japan. He is also Director of the Japan Information and Culture Center at the Embassy. Mr. Murata joined the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in 2008 after he worked in the private sector. And before coming to Canada, he was in charge of Myanmar affairs and PKO, and posted abroad in Cambodia and Karachi, Pakistan. So, Mr. Murata, I hand the mic over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Sian. So my name is Atsushi Murata, and I, as introduced, I'm director of the Information and Culture Center of the Embassy of Japan. So today I'm very happy to have this opportunity. So thank you very much for all arrangement, and Christine san, Xian san, thank you. So I'd like to begin now. So congratulations on your selection for the 2021 Kakehashi Project Young Leaders Program. Since starting in 2013, over 1,300 people have participated in the Kakehashi Project, an exchange program aimed to promote and strengthen people-to-people ties. I hope you can deepen your knowledge about Japan by taking part in this program. Today, I'm glad to have this opportunity to give you an overview of Japan-Canada relations. And I am also asked to explain seriously. So today I wear suits, not like photo. So yeah. So in the presentation, so I will focus on the three aspects: history, politics, and economy, and people-to-people exchanges. So firstly, about history. So according to the record, it was 1877 when the first immigrant from Japan, Manzo Nagano, came to British Columbia. Nagano was involved in the salmon export as well as restaurant and hotel business. The first Canadian, meanwhile, came to Japan earlier than that. It was in the mid-19th century. He became the first ever English teacher in Japan. Towards the end of the 19th century, Canadians came to Japan as a missionary. In addition to the engaging in mission work, they established universities such as Toyo Eiwa University, which continue to today. Diplomatic relations between Japan and Canada started in around the same period. In 1889, the Consulate General of Japan opened in Vancouver, and followed in 1928 by the Embassy of Japan in Ottawa. And in 1929, by the Embassy of Canada in Japan. So this is the 93rd years of our diplomatic relations. So now, I move to the politics and economy. So briefly, so after resuming diplomatic relations in 1952, after World War II, Canada supported Japan's return to the international community, for instance, by backing up Japan's membership in the United Nations and the OECD. Since then, bilateral relations between two countries have been strong and to this day. As members of the G7 and the Indo-Pacific countries, the field of cooperation between the two countries are wide-ranging. High-level visits are also active. The Prime Minister Abe visited Canada to participate in G7 summit in Charlevoix in 2018, and in 2019, prior to the onset of pandemic, then Prime Minister Abe again visited Canada in April, and the Prime Minister Trudeau traveled to Japan for the G20 summit in June. And the relationship between the two countries has been further strengthened with the 3 virtual summit meetings and 1 in-person summit in UK in June this year. There have also been official visits by Japanese imperial families, such as the visit of the Emperor and Empress of Japan to Canada in 2009, and the visit of Princess Takamado in 2019. And the Japan and Canada summit meeting in April 2019, Japan and Canada reached a consensus on the strengthening strategic partnership under the vision of free and open Indo-Pacific called FOIP, aiming for the peace and stability based on the common values of rule of law and democracy. And in May 2021, the two countries agreed to deepen the cooperation in 6 areas to promote this vision. The areas of the cooperation are: first, rule of law, and peacekeeping and peace building activities, and humanitarian and disaster assistance, public health security, response to the COVID-19, energy security, promotion of free trade and implementation of trade agreements, and finally, environment and climate change. For example, the two countries are making progress in advancing cooperation, such as economic cooperation, by promoting trade and investment via the CPTPP, as well as security cooperation with Canada's engagement in monitoring and surveillance activities against ship-to-ship transfer by North Korean flagged vessels. And finally, people-to-people exchange. So it's about Kakehashi, of course. And people-to-people exchange, including the Kakehashi project, are also very active. The JET program was first introduced in Canada in 1988, and about 9,400 Canadians participated in the program since then. Canadian participants have worked at Japanese school as English teachers and have engaged in international exchanges in Japanese local governments. Even after their return to Canada, JET participants have established alumni associations throughout Canada and are contributing to the promoting exchange between Japan and Canada. Prior to the onset of pandemic, the number of Canadian tourists to Japan continued to hit the record heights, surpassing 320,000 in 2019. Also, the Tokyo 2020 Olympic and Paralympic Games were held without spectators due to the COVID-19. The Canadian Olympic teams and Canadian teams helped stimulate Japanese interest in Canada, thanks to their great performance and through the exchange that took place at the pre-training campsite in rural Japan. Also, I have to mention many Canadian journalists reported about Japanese culture and daily life from Japan to Canada during the Olympic event. So especially they focus on the Japanese convenience stores. So they introduced onigiri, it's like rice bowl and some soft drinks to Canada. And as long as I know, many people go to the Japanese grocery shop in Toronto to buy these things now. And so I'm very happy to know that. And so I hope that such exchanges will serve as a basis for good relations between our nations in the long run. So Kakehashi means building a bridge. I hope that will help contribute to this bridge of friendship between Japan and Canada. And I also really hope my this brief presentation will help you to establish a bridge between Japan and Canada. So thank you very much for listening, and good luck. Okay.
Thank you very much, Murata-san, for this very comprehensive presentation on bilateral relations between Canada and Japan. So now, Sean has told me that we're going to do a tour de table. Everybody gets 1 minute, maybe not even 1 minute, let's say 30 seconds, I think, according to the number of people. We have to make it short. Your name, your occupation, your affiliation, where you're located, and one interesting fact about yourself that you'd like to share with the people. So, Sean, should I ask you to call them out?
Sure.
Because I think the screen, people see everything slightly differently, so it's hard to go by the screen.
Sure. Okay. Shall we start with Ashley?
Yeah, absolutely. So, anin everyone. Nin Ashley Nadishnakaz, Kikomishkigog, Donjaba, Mississippi Makododem. So, hello everyone. My name is Ashley Cardinal. I'm Business Development and Governance Coordinator at Steel River Group, and I just recently moved to Calgary from Cobourg, Ontario. So, I live in Toronto and Ottawa. I'm a Anishinaabe from a little reserve out in Manitoba, and thank you for this opportunity. And I just adopted this cat, so sorry she's bugging me tonight. Great to meet you all.
Thank you. Coulson?
Hello there. My name is Coulson Ford. My Tlingit name is Yalachuni Gochka, which means straightforward, honest wolf. I'm from Yukon Territory, Canada. My First Nation is Kwani First Nation, and I am the Kwani First Nation Youth Counselor. I look forward to learning from all of you, and I'm just blessed that we're all able to come together today. Thank you.
Thank you. June, huh? June, can you hear me? I think maybe he's frozen.
Can you hear me? Hello, everyone. My name is Jun Han. I'm Korean Canadian, living in Vancouver. I'm working as the marketing and advertising manager at the Korea Daily, the media in Vancouver. So I was a former member of the Korean equestrian team, horseback riding, 조바 선수 되시다. So I'm very interested in the Japan and Japan culture and the Japanese people. And I've been to Japan many times, and I'm very happy to be selected as this member this year. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Erin?
Hi, everyone. I'm Erin. I normally live in Ottawa, but I'm here in Victoria visiting my mom. And now that we can visit people again. So I work in the heritage sector. Used to work for UNESCO, the World Heritage Center in Paris, but now I'm doing similar work here in Canada. I guess an interesting fact is that I lived and traveled and worked in South America for about 4 years, mostly in Colombia. So one of my favorite activities is dancing, which again has been quite limited for the last 2.5 years. But I've never been to any Asian country, so I'm really excited to be nominated as part of this program and looking forward to hearing more about everyone else. So thanks.
Thank you. Nastania?
Hey, yes. So my name is Nastania Mullen. I'm up in Nunavut, Iqaluit, the capital. Have an undergraduate degree from Australia. Did my last semester in Paris. And most recently, I just finished law school. So now I am in articling position. A little history. I was a part of the devolution negotiating team. I was a senior advisor to the deputy minister and former director of policy and planning. Interesting fact, I was going to do a semester in Helsinki, Finland for law school. COVID hit, and I used that opportunity to build myself a cottage. So I finished building a cottage, which is pretty awesome during the midst of COVID. Pleasure to see everybody.
Thank you. Claire?
Hi, everyone. My name is Claire. First, I just want to say thank you so much for having me here. I feel like this is such an incredible opportunity, and I'm so, so grateful to be here. So a little bit about me. I'm a teacher. I'm from Toronto. I live in Toronto. I'm a teacher with the Toronto District School Board. And that's just a little bit about me. I've been affiliated with the Simon Wiesenthal Center for Holocaust Studies since I was in high school. I did a lot of volunteer work for them when I was in high school, and particularly hosting and helping coordinate larger events for days like Yom HaShoah, which is a day where we commemorate Holocaust victims and survivors. So yeah, that's how I got affiliated with this project. And I'm so grateful to be here.
Thank you. Jean? Gilles Matouche.
Oh, hi. Hi. My name is Gilles Matouche. I currently work as the business services assistant under the Cree Nation government, and I'm from Miss Disney, Quebec, and I'm Cree. I'm pretty sure most of you know what that is. And the interesting thing about me, I think I would say, I just started an online course at Harvard University, learning entrepreneurship in emerging economies. So, yeah.
Great.
So, thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. Jack?
Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me and all of us. My name's Jack. Right now I'm in Montreal, but I'm originally from Toronto. I work in venture capital, so like investing in really new tech companies. And an interesting fact about me, I would say, is I've been skiing for pretty much as long as I've been walking. So that's my fun fact.
Thank you. Darius?
Hi, everybody. My name is Darius. I'm from the Cree Nation of Chisasibi. I'm also Cree. And I am a student at Carleton University for my Bachelor's of Commerce. And one thing interesting about me is I do CrossFit.
Great, thank you. James?
Hi, my name is James. I am Mi'kmaq, and I'm calling in from Ganawage, so Montreal today. And I am a desk officer at Global Affairs Canada. I help oversee our relationship with Somalia right now. Prior to that, Kenya and Uganda. And I suppose an interesting fact about me was I lived in Nepal for 4 months. During my undergrad, I took a semester off and lived there and worked, so that was pretty cool.
Thank you. Jonathan?
Hi, I'm Jonathan. I work for the federal government and specifically the Immigration and Refugee Board as an adjudicative officer. I'm from Toronto and I currently work out of Toronto, but from home. An interesting fact about me, all throughout university, through the summers, I worked as a tree planter.
Thank you. Ethan?
Oh, hi. Well, my name's Ethan and I'm from Member 2 First Nation, and I work as a heritage interpreter at the Member 2 Heritage Park.
Thank you. Nicole?
Oh, sorry, I'm just first time using this tablet, so apologies for the delay. My name is Nicole and I live in Ottawa, but I'm originally from Toronto, and I work for the Department of Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship Canada as an assistant director. I'm actually currently working on the Afghan refugee file, so it's been hopping, very busy. And my fun fact is, even though I'm first generation Canadian, I've actually lived on 3 continents. So as much as my family rushed to come to Canada, I've been going out all over the world trying to explore new places. So I'm very excited to be part of this. So thanks so much.
Awesome, thank you. Kirpa?
Hi everyone, my name is Kirpa Graywall. I'm currently a policy analyst at the Public Health Agency of Canada, currently working on transition files as a result of the federal election. So also very busy here. A fun fact about me is that in my faith, we do not cut our hair. So I have 5 feet of hair and I am also 5 feet.
Wow, thank you. Abby?
That's me, right? I don't know if there's another Abby. Well, I'd like to thank the organizers first for organizing this session to get to know better about the fellow nominees and for the Kakehashi project. My name is Abby Park and I'm currently in Calgary working as a program officer for immigration, refugees and settlement, Citizens for Canada. So hello, hi to fellow federal government employees. I'm nominated by Calgary Korean Association. And fun fact about me, I've lived in Korea and China, but I've never been to Japan. So this project will complete my East Asia venture. That's it for me.
All right, thank you so much. Have I missed anybody? I think I've got everybody. Yeah. Okay, so you've learned a little bit about each other at this point. What we're going to do now is go into breakout rooms just briefly. Just going to have a few minutes to get to know each other. So we're going to do 2 sets of breakout rooms, so you'll get to mix and mingle a little bit, okay? So sorry, I think they're just setting up the breakouts.
Technology is great when it works.
Yes. Yes.
We have a great cohort this time. Very excited to meet all of you. Fantastic group. I should tell you, while we're waiting for the technology to work, I'm delighted to meet so many from our Indigenous peoples here today. I don't know if some of you know the foundation out of my office. We run a women's trade mission, women-only trade missions to Asia. And we just announced our next mission, which will be to Australia and New Zealand, but we're focusing on Indigenous women entrepreneurs. So I'm really delighted to meet so many of you and make some connections with you, and you can spread the word amongst your Indigenous women in business who might be interested in coming along on the mission. Well, I think that's not working, Sean.
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure what. Okay, maybe
into the presentations, and then
sure.
Hopefully the breakouts will work.
Sure.
So, would you like me to introduce them?
Sure, please.
Okay. So we're very, very lucky today to have a couple of alumni with us here to present and tell you about their experiences. And I'm going to start with the first presenter, Faven Abdipta. Currently, she works as a program officer in a federal government department where she collaborates with a range of stakeholders to support the settlement of newcomers to Canada. Outside of her work, Faven is also a member of the Toronto Youth Council at the Asia Pacific Foundation of Canada's Toronto office. This council seeks to raise awareness about the importance of Asia among Canadian youth through informative and engaging online content and events. Over the past several years, Faven has also held various positions with the G7 and G20 research groups, which are based at the University of Toronto, Toronto's Trinity College, and she has served as a media analyst and as a lead analyst on multiple research projects related to global governance. Faven is a graduate of the University of Toronto, where she completed an honors Bachelor of Arts in Political Science and International Relations. And she's starting in the fall. She's going to be moving to London, to the London School of Economics, where she'll be pursuing a Master's of Science in International Relations. So first of all, I want to congratulate you, Faven, for this wonderful accomplishment, achievement. And she will be focusing or specializing on the Asia Pacific region. Faven took part in the Kakehashi project in 2018 and has been a major strength for our youth group since she's joined, since she went to on the Kakehashi project. So Faven, over to you.
Thank you for the introduction, Christine. My internet connection is a bit unstable right now, so apologies in advance if there's any delays, but yes, so good evening, everyone. And first and foremost, I wanted to join in on the congratulations for having been selected to participate in this program. As an alumni of the Kakehashi program myself, I know how memorable and wonderful this experience is, and I'm just really excited to have the opportunity to be able to speak about it further and discuss the impact that it's had on my life, and I'm sure we'll have on yours as well. So I'll just be sharing a presentation today, and so it'll just take a few moments to set that up, so we'll be doing that right now. Please let me know if you can see my screen. Okay, great. So I'll just start off. So in February 2018, I was fortunate enough to participate in the Kakehashi project. I was a part of a delegation of undergraduate and graduate students from the University of Toronto who spent approximately a week in Japan. And these photos here are from our very first night on this trip when we had arrived in Tokyo. And going into this trip, all of us had an existing academic and personal interest in Japan. But what I will say is that for most of us, this trip marked not only our first time in Japan, but our first time in Asia. So really, from the moment that we stepped off that plane, we were really excited to see what the week had for us. So over the course of the next several days, we would spend time both in Tokyo and Kyoto, and we were able to learn so much more about Japan than what we had simply learned in our classroom, and we were also able to meet so many people. So during the trip, we were accompanied by 2 guides from JICE who were able to provide us with information and context with regards to everything that we were seeing. So as you can see in this particular picture from here, we spent some time in Kyoto, and we were able to participate in a lot of different activities here. So we actually were able to visit a Buddhist temple, participate in a Zazen Buddhist meditation and a traditional tea ceremony. We also visited multiple shrines and temples, and we were also given the opportunity to witness a showcase of kimonos. What was undoubtedly the highlight of the trip for me was our homestay experience in Wazuka. So Wazuka is this small town of approximately 4,000 people, which is located in the Kyoto countryside. And during our time in Wazuka, we were really kindly and enthusiastically welcomed into the homes of Japanese families, where we shared meals together and were able to have conversations about our lives, our routines, and our respective countries. And speaking from my own experience, myself and 2 of my peers were paired up with this elderly Japanese couple who were in their late 60s. And despite the obvious language barriers that existed between us, we were still able to have really great conversations with each other. We sort of bridged those communication gaps using tools like Google Translate and our pocket books, which contained a lot of useful phrases, and we even participated in really fun activities together like karaoke. And so in these particular photos here, our host family actually gave us a tour of Wazuka, which was really incredible. We were able to walk among the fields, and this town is particularly well known for its tea farming. So it was really great being able to see what our host family did in terms of work and what so many others in the town did for work as well. And overall, I would say that the homestay was a really special experience for all of us. It was really fantastic being able to see what Japan was like outside of its major cities and getting to make those really personal connections, which we likely may not have had the chance to were it not for this program. So of course, we also spent some time in Tokyo, where we visited many different areas, iconic neighborhoods, and a number of different historical sites and landmarks. In addition to all the sightseeing that we did do, we also were able to attend a number of lectures during our time on this program. Notably, we were able to attend a presentation at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Japan, as well as a number of lectures at different universities such as Keio University and Chuo University. We also had the opportunity to visit the University of Tokyo, which is where the bottom two photos were taken. And this was also a really memorable part of the trip for me because we were able to connect with Japanese students who are our age. And we not only had informal conversations with them about our lives, our hobbies, our routines, but we also were able to engage in more formal roundtable discussions on critical issues impacting both of our countries, like aging populations and demographic changes, on international trade and security. And so having this dialogue with our peers on these issues was really fantastic, and we were able to learn more about each other's countries' perspectives. One other notable part of the trip I wanted to just highlight here was our trip to the Diet in Japan, so Japan's parliament. So architecturally, it's a really great place to check out. There's so much history there. And these are just photos in front of the Diet. And as if that wasn't spectacular enough, we were also given the opportunity to meet with a current member of the Diet, Ms. Kuniko Uniguchi. So Ms. Kuniko Uniguchi is a member of the House of Councillors, and she represents the Chiba Prefecture for the Liberal Party of Japan. And this was another highlight of the trip for me. It was really, incredible getting to meet with a current member of Parliament. And Ms. Uniguchi in particular was highly accomplished and a trailblazer in many respects. Just very briefly, she'd served in a number of high-level government positions. She had served as Japan's first Minister of State for Gender Equality and Social Affairs, and had also previously served as the ambassador of Japan to the Conference on Disarmament in Geneva. And in our meeting with her, we were able to hear more about her career, how she got to where she was, and a number of really interesting policy issues and challenges that she had worked on. And in my last slide, I did just want to briefly speak about my experience following my participation on the Kakehashi project. Although our time in Japan sadly had to eventually come to an end, this program did have lasting impact on my life. So not only did I meet, so many people throughout this trip that I've been able to maintain contact with to this day, but I've also been able to meet and to interact with a number of other Kakehashi alumni from Canada, Japan, and the United States over the years through in-person events, and more recently, due to the pandemic, online events as well. And so these photos here were actually from events that have been held over the years at the residence of the Consul General here in Toronto. It's been really great continuing to reflect on our experience on this program, in these events, discussing what we learned on the program and what we've learned since, and just continuing to further strengthen those connections between Canada and Japan. And personally speaking, this trip also further solidified my interest in Asia and in Japan in particular, and it did influence my subsequent academic and personal trajectory. As was mentioned earlier, I'm actually going to be pursuing a master's degree in international relations with a focus on the Asia Pacific, and also more specifically with a focus on Japan. Just to conclude, I'll always remember my participation through this program, and I'm eagerly looking forward to the day where, when we'll be able to visit Japan again. And I'm confident that this trip likewise will have a very significant impact on all of you as well. So that concludes my presentation, and I'll stop sharing my screen now.
Thank you so much, Faven. And you're a poster child graduate of the Kakehashi program. This is a type of thing that we want to see after participation in the program. Japan, they invest so much money in the Kakehashi program, particularly to find new ambassadors like yourself who will continue the work and to engage the people in Japan and the country. So thank you so much for that, Faven. Next, I'd like to introduce to you Gregory John. And Gregory is a proud alumnus of the Kakehashi program in 2019, where he was invited as a Indigenous business leader to share experience and learn from one of the world's largest uncolonized economies, Japan. Gregory has accumulated a wealth of professional experience across Turtle Island, Canada and US, and across countless industries. His expertise lies in Indigenous relations and stakeholder relations, where he utilizes his superpower of creating and maintaining authentic relationships across his career, where he focuses that towards creating cross-cultural opportunities in pursuit of Indigenous economic empowerment in Canada. He's a proud citizen of the Métis Nation of Alberta. He is a highly sought-after panelist and keynote speaker who has discussed his vision for the Canadian economy across Canada and the globe. He was invited to speak at the Globe and Mail Future Forward Summit in 2019 in Toronto, at Calgary's 2019 Energy Disruptors, and has been invited to guest speak at the World Petroleum Congress in Houston in December, where he will share with the world how Canadian energy is transforming itself through Indigenous partnership. He holds a Bachelor of Commerce and Finance and is a candidate to receive his Executive MBA from the University of Calgary in 2022. He was awarded the 2018 Calgary Stampede Western Trailblazer Award and the 2020 Daily Oil Bulletin Rising Star Award. More recently, he has also been nominated for the Emerging Leader Award at the Global Energy Show in September 2021. So with no further ado, it's a pleasure to introduce to you Gregory John. Gregory, over to you.
Thank you so much, Christine-san. Okinistu Global Nistowa Gregory John, and I come to you from the beautiful Treaty 7 territory, also known as Mohkinstsis, which is the Blackfoot name for Calgary. And you know, I really appreciate this opportunity to speak to you today because 2019 represents the last kind of in-person exchange that we had. You know, we were out in Japan in November of 2019. Little did we know in a short 3 or 4 months, the world would be turned upside down forever. You know, I think one of the amazing things that we got to experience was, you know, bringing, you know, there was 4 Indigenous business leaders, including Chief Charlene Gale from Fort Nelson First Nation, Kayla Stephenson from Curve Lake First Nation, and Steve Saddleback from Samson Cree Nation, which was, and then myself from the Métis Nation of Alberta. What really struck me as I got to understand who and what I was getting myself into was this concept of a bridge. As a proud Métis man, we view ourselves as the bridge between Indigenous and non-Indigenous people as a result of, you know, our interactions with both Indigenous and European settlers. So what I take a great deal of pride in is being that cultural bridge of understanding between two, you know, communities that don't really know anything about each other, and over the last 18 months certainly have been confronted with some of our histories that don't necessarily reflect, you know, our taught understanding of who Canada is. I think one of the most impactful things, you know, that I got to experience over the last 18 months was really taking in what I experienced in Japan, not necessarily on what was different, but what we can certainly learn from each other as we, as a human race, figure out who we are post-COVID. I think a lot of people have ideas around what that is, and that's creating and resulting in a lot of societal conflict and frustration that we see in everyday media, but then our own personal interactions. We had the amazing opportunity to be again in Tokyo, but then we spent 3 days in Hiroshima, where we got to you know, experience one of the most impactful moments of my entire life, which was visiting the Hiroshima atomic bomb memorial, which is UNESCO World Site. Learning and hearing the stories from a survivor who talked about, very similar things that we as Indigenous people have heard, having seen their sister go and leave the house and never come back, was one of those really impactful moments for me that made me realize some of our experiences as Indigenous people in Canada and Japanese are very, very similar, resulting in traumatic, intergenerational trauma that somehow we have to find a way through. Japan is one of, if not the largest uncolonized economies in the world, where the Japanese people represent an Indigenous culture that has not seen the influences of colonization like Canada has. I view that as an incredible opportunity for especially Indigenous Canadians and business leaders to see what is possible if what we're able to work through as a collective society in addressing some of these traumas is taken as a hurdle that we can all clear together in pursuit of what is possible, demonstrated by Japan. I have a few notes here on just kind of some of the things that I really was able to dive into as some of the highlights of what we can learn from our exchange with Japan. We have so much to learn from Japan as Indigenous people, as they built an economy that now represents 4% of global GDP, despite being home to only 1.6% of the global population. They built a $5 trillion US economy through trade and import of natural resources and foodstuffs to feed their people. This draw of bad luck geographically could only be mitigated one way, through making their workforce their economic driver. Japan's global reputation as a technology and innovation leader is underscored by outperforming both the US and China by a factor of 3 on patents granted per capita. Japan has proven that Indigenous economies operate best when people are the focus, and the focus and the drivers of those true successes. While, when we look at our own barriers that exist in Canada, I would be remiss for not acknowledging that the Indian Act still poses significant barriers for us. But just look to Japan. If they can build the world's 3rd largest economy without natural resources or arable land, just think of what we can do, if what we're able to look at as something that is painful for very many of us and now a shared experience for most of Canada. If what we look at as on the other side of this tumultuous time is the opportunity to self-determine our own local economies as Indigenous people and step into our rights of self-government and self-determination at the end of this really tumultuous time. Japan, for me, now represents that real concrete example of what Indigenous economies are truly capable of. Canada is known for its natural resources. And one of the most impactful experiences when I was in Japan was when we had the opportunity to meet with Kaidanren, which is the Japanese Business Council. We were actually in a bilateral meeting with Canadian Council, what was the name? The Business Council of Canada, where the CEO of TransAlta and a forestry company, along with Indigenous leaders, business leaders, including myself, were able to address some of the biggest CEOs in Japan on what our economy and how our economies can participate together in a mutually beneficial way. Again, Japan really affirmed for me some of the things that we perceive about ourselves as Canadian energy. We perceive as Canadian energy that we do it the best, we do it the cleanest, and we are recognized for that globally. Where we did find that message coming from somebody not Canadian was at the Kaidanren, where we had these major CEOs saying, despite it might be a little bit longer for us to get energy from Canada, we want to work with Canada to satisfy the energy needs of Japan. Since the 2011 Fukushima nuclear meltdown, there is zero social ability to get the nuclear power online again, and what that has done to the Japanese economy is really impactful in terms of what it costs to import energy from around the world without that nuclear capacity. They look to Canada to be a huge source of energy for them, as it is the shortest distance to ship energy from Canada into Japan. So when our mission was a little more economically focused, but what I heard from these business leaders really heightened our responsibility to continue to produce energy in a responsible way that is at the forefront of environmental and socially responsible means, in partnership with our Indigenous communities. Especially in British Columbia and Alberta, where I do most of my work, there is a lot of discourse on what that looks like. But what we have to acknowledge is that the global, the global economy really is looking to the leadership of Canada to find a better way that we're not exactly sure of right now. This exchange for me was so validating in the work that I do and so many do, and I know Ashley does at Steel River as Canada's fastest growing startup. It just happens to be Indigenous owned. There's a lot of place for us in the economy, and we really need to focus on where there's mutual need. And this 8 days that we were able to spend in Japan was a huge validating factor for the work that is being done, that has been done, and that must be done into the future. So with that, I'll end it there.
Thank you so much, Gregory. Really, really impactful presentation and takeaways for a lot of us. The work of the missions, as I mentioned earlier, is really working on finding partnerships with Japan. Japan was the first mission that we conducted. So we took, 36 women, half of them entrepreneurs and half of them with C-suites, but we tried to find economic partnerships there. So, I'm glad to hear all this from you. Offline, I'm going to call you again, Gregory. So stay tuned, okay? I wanted to pursue this discussion with you.
For sure.
Anyway, now we have a few minutes, Sean, to do a Q&A, and happy to take questions for any of these speakers, from Mr. Murata to our keynote speakers. Just put your hand up and ask whatever you'd like. Don't be shy. I have questions already planted ready here if you guys don't want to ask any questions, but do let me know if you have any. All right, I'm going to start with Murata-san then, and ask Murata-san a question. Murata-san, we've had, since the pandemic, I'm just wondering if you can share with the group if Japan has had any in-person friendship ties program exchanges like the Kakehashi since the pandemic began. I know in some parts of the world it wasn't as bad in the earlier stages, and Japan has many programs, bilateral and regional programs concerning young people. So I wonder if you can speak to that, Murata-san.
Thank you for your question. Actually, unfortunately, we cannot have any in-person exchange programs. And but hopefully, next month, JET participants are going to Japan. So we believe so. We will not have any problem anymore. So just hope and wish they are going to Japan next month.
Fingers crossed.
Yes, yes. Thank you very much.
Okay, very good. Thank you for that. And we're hoping that the same will happen by the time in the spring for our cohorts tonight. For Faven, as a young person with a wide breadth of knowledge and experience with regards to facilitating connections between Canada and Asia, could you say a few words about what you hope to gain from pursuing graduate studies focused on the Asia Pacific?
Sure. What I will say is that, I mean, I was always interested in global affairs going into university, but I never knew what region of the world I wanted to sort of specialize in. And as I progressed in the studies, I think I became increasingly aware of just how significant Asia is to international security, to international economics. There's the phrase that, we're living in the Asian century, which I think is accurate. So yeah, in terms of pursuing studies in this region of the world, I just think it is going to be an increasingly important area. And yeah, I'm hoping to eventually move into more policy work and to utilize, the specialized knowledge I gained from the degree and, the other skills and apply it there.
Fantastic. And we look forward to your return so you can work with us and collaborate with us further. For Gregory, could you speak to some of the ways that institutions like Kakehashi and the Asia Pacific Foundation of Canada, our foundation, could work to better include subaltern, non-colonial or anti-colonial perspectives into our work? We're focusing a lot on Indigenous people right now, so that would be helpful if you could share some thoughts.
Absolutely, and I think I hit on some of those points of what we can learn through this cultural exchange. Again, I said it is so easy to see the differences, but throughout the pandemic, as kind of my last opportunity to engage on a global level, I looked at the similarities buried in those differences for us to look at. Looking at collective trauma, and how we can work together to find a positive way through dealing through something so hard. I think, like I said, in the last 18 months, Canada has been confronted with a trauma that, is layered on top of the COVID-19 trauma of all of these, colonial discoveries at, these residential schools. That is a huge thing that is going to, affect all Canadians. And we need to look to those around us to help us with that, because I don't think we can do it on our own. And I think the more and more we share our stories, and I certainly understand, how through sharing we can find that collective strength, and it needs to look outside of our borders so that we don't look at it as a thing that only Canada has gone through. Countries have gone through collective traumas like the Hiroshima bombing and have kind of created this way of talking about it. And one thing I do want to share here is how they talk about how the bomb attacked Japan, not the Americans attacked Japan. And I thought that was such an interesting position of how to talk about, so that we don't perpetrate and try to point fingers at people as we try to move through these traumas. It was the bomb that attacked, not the Americans. And I think, we have to look at similar experiences around the world to find ways through this difficult time that tries to come to terms with some of the realities and the true history of where Canada came from.
Did you have a chance, I don't know on your program if you met any Ainu, or did you have a chance to, you didn't, I guess you went to Hiroshima, so you didn't go up to Hokkaido.
No, we didn't.
That we can collaborate on, I think, to share stories and compare experiences with the Indigenous people of Japan, the Ainu.
Yeah,
right.
That'd be wonderful.
That's great. Okay. Any questions? Nobody's got their hand up here, so I'm going to have to keep finding questions here. I have another question for Murata-san. Japan is quickly catching up with its vaccination rollout. They were a little slow, I think we all know, at the beginning, but they're really catching up. And as of yesterday, I think I noted in the news that they will soon surpass the US in the numbers of fully vaccinated people. This is fantastic because I'm waiting to get on a plane to go to Japan soon too. But with this in mind, do you have any idea as to when Japan will begin easing its restrictions on the entry of foreign visitors, in particular exempting foreign visitors from the quarantine if they're fully vaccinated?
I don't have any information about the restriction, but I think there's some discussion going on. So I hope one day soon, so we can go to Japan easily. So even myself, my family is in Japan now. They went back to Japan in March, so I couldn't meet them for a long time. So I'm also a person who are waiting for the losing restriction.
Okay, all right. Well, we'll keep our fingers crossed because the Kakehashi exchange program or the trip is 8 days long. So if we're in quarantine, if our Canadians are in quarantine for 14 days, they're not going to go anywhere except the hotel, right? But anyway, all right. Sean, should we switch over to you at this point?
I think maybe we could take a couple more questions. I think that seems to be the way people want to go, and we didn't get a chance to speak in the breakout rooms in the beginning. So I think Colson has had his hand up for a while.
Okay, Colson, over to you.
Thank you for this opportunity. My question's for Gregory, and it's a two-pronged question. So first, how do you see the nation of Japan and its people contributing to the reconciliation between Canada and its Indigenous peoples? And furthermore, where do you see nations who reside within Canada who already have self-government agreements fitting into this dynamic or this discourse? Thank you.
So there's a lot of I've had the opportunity to connect outside of the Kakehashi program with APEC, which is the Asia Pacific Economic Forum that was hosted by New Zealand this past year. And what has been amazing to see is how Indigenous economies are connecting with each other within the frameworks of their self-governing agreements. So instead of going through the province of Alberta or the federal government of Canada, they are going through the Métis Nation of Alberta, and really becoming that example of the nation-to-nation relationship that we all know is just kind of lip service at the federal level. So I mean, there's a huge opportunity to directly engage and build Indigenous trade networks on this Indigenous to Indigenous platform. It is happening, and it is happening now, where we realize that the power of having self-government and self-determining economies don't need the provincial government or the federal governments anymore. So we're making those connections already, and really with intention, where the foundation of business trust is built on that cultural exchange component. And I find that has been such a life-giving opportunity for me to contextualize my Indigenous experience on a global scale through the experiences of others.
Fantastic. Jack?
Yes, I just had a quick question. I know the travel restrictions are kind of vague, and there's like no firm idea of when those are going to change. But does the foundation have a specific timeline in mind as to when they think the trip is going to depart, like a month, or just any idea?
I think Murata-san said actually it's still up in the air, but in terms of the funding side, what I can say is that we're funded to do the travel before the fiscal year, end of the fiscal year, which is March 31st, 2022. So we want to get you over there, hopefully by, if all restrictions are lifted, etc., then we're targeting the winter, probably between January and March of next year.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Bertie?
Yeah, well, good evening, everyone. It's very interesting to hear everything. So it's sort of a repeat of what we experienced too in our own little trip. It wasn't organized by anyone in particular. We went to Japan for a couple of things, but somewhere along the way, the Canadian Embassy also included cultural exchange with the Ainu Nation. So that was pretty exciting for us. I went there back in 2018 with two youngsters. And in this trip, if everything works out, I'm hoping to bring along two more youngsters with me. They're here, Darius and also Joe. I just wanted to say, it's it's a great honor to be involved in these type of events and activities. For sure, I think when we do get a chance to go there, I spent my 10 days with the embassy on my back, sort of rolling the red carpet for us along the way in Hokkaido. But I can tell you, two of our main interests why we intend to go back again to Japan is we have probably the highest quality matsutake mushrooms in the world. We keep claiming that. And the Consul General of Montreal has enjoyed them for some years now. So it is something we've been working on, arranging on more full-time, permanent basis directly with the auction house in Tokyo. So as an exchange, we've been after the Japanese government for one thing, the greenhouse technology for cold climates. And the science around that, I think, has a lot of impact in the country. And if we manage to bring, that type of technology in the country, especially for northern climates like ours, and it can open up new doors. It taught us a lot of things, of course. You compare the technology here in the country, at least with greenhouses. I'm kind of scared to say, but it has to be said. It's nothing compared to Japanese technology. So this is film farming. We visited Hokkaido and met with some of the highest officials in that technology. So what do we learn there? For one, it put a stop to my questioning if tomato is actually a fruit. When I went to Japan, it proved, the country proved that it was a fruit.
Delicious, aren't they?
Yeah. So seeing some of the pictures there, we went to a few places. Got a chance to visit a few places, including Kyoto. I'm looking forward, not so much for me, but the two youngsters I'm coming with me, will be coming with me. It's more for them, because for me, I'm more interested to see that technology come to our territory. I'm a picker myself for matsutake, probably one at the top in my area. I claim that every year.
Fantastic.
And we're picking now, and we have an agreement with a company, Japanese company, based out of Montreal, but it's a global company, of course. But eventually, we want to deal directly to the auction house as our main target.
That's wonderful. That's fantastic. But you know, one of the aspects to the program, the in-country program, when you take part in it, is to showcase, to show you Japanese innovation and technology. And you will visit a lot of the technological, well, the hubs and, you know, clusters and whatnot. And you'll see, especially in the green tech space, you know, with all the hype on climate change. I'm sure all of you have been watching some of the debates going on for the election, but definitely Japan has been working on climate issues for some time. And I've been amazed at some of the technology exhibits that I've seen, you know, the advancements over there. So when you get to go, you'll have an opportunity to see some of the high-end technology that's taking place, the R&D and whatnot. So look forward to that. And I just wanted to mention to our, who was the person who talked about the research in Holocaust? Was that you, Claire?
Yeah, so I've actually been affiliated with the Simon Wiesenthal Center, which is a center for human rights that just promotes Holocaust education. Mm-hmm. So yeah.
Because I wanted to mention to you, and certainly Murata-san or his colleagues, Nakamura-san, they can speak much better than I can, but you know, there's a strong tie between Japanese and Jewish people, right? There was a diplomat in Europe, a Japanese diplomat, who broke, what can I say, breached the directives from headquarters, and he issued over 2,000 visas to help people who would have been otherwise.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's incredible. Wow.
And he was honored by the Japanese Canadian Cultural Center here as a hero, in, you know, posthumously, of course, but he saved over 2,000 Jewish people, and a lot of them came to Canada, in fact.
Wow, that's incredible. I actually didn't know that. So
that's something you should research.
That's amazing. Yeah, amazing.
Yeah, okay. So, Sean, do we have more questions? Yes, Nastania.
Yeah, thank you. So this this event that's being hosted right now kind of is giving me more of a bird's eye view of the similarities that I'm seeing between everybody within this cohort, which I think is super cool. Yourself, Christine, and Gregory brought up interesting topics that I'm hoping to further explore. So what I do on my spare time, I'm a board of director for the Power Corporation, which is the sole power provider for Nunavut, and also sit on a board of director for Nunavut Business Credit Corporation, which provides loans of up to $2 million to high-risk businesses. So Gregory, you brought up something that really kind of intrigued me. I liked how you brought up your experience with also this program, the project that you attended. What were your main takeaways that you used today? Because, you know, the reality is it's 8 days, and I'm trying to wrap my head around what I'll be able to bring back to my, you know, to Nunavut and or wherever I'm stationed, that I can practically see from like an energy business, or am I establishing relationships? I'm just trying to still figure out I guess, the overarching goal of what I'll be able to do, because you kind of touched on it really well, but how practical is that for 8 days? I guess I'm trying to figure out. Thanks.
It's a packed 8 days. Be
Yeah.
prepared. You're going to be running for the whole time you're there. And
First 2 days with jet lag too. My biggest takeaway is, like I said, I think we like to talk to ourselves as Canadians around our role in the global economy centered around natural resources and energy. What was really affirmed for me that there is a global need and demand for what we're doing, and that we are on the right track. You know, I think there's a lot of naysayers that like to say just shut oil and gas down. Well, that's not going to happen, and it's not just the energy industry saying that in Canada. It's the Japanese saying, if you can build it, we will buy it. And you know, there's nothing more demonstrated by their ownership in like Coastal GasLink and LNG Canada. 15% of it is owned by the Japanese. And I mean, there's a huge demand for, if we can get it to the, you know, Tidewater, there is huge demand at the Asia Pacific for what we're doing. Now, for me, hearing that really has kind of made my purpose and career more resolute in what we're doing and the way we have to go. We are on the right track with what we're doing right now. We better not go backwards, or the opportunities that are on the other side may not exist in the form, you know, around. We need to continue to push environmental protection. We need to continue to push a strong regulatory regime that is known around the world as the best. There's no reason for us to go backwards when there are so many affirming conversations that are being had between Canada and Japan that make that mutually beneficial relationship really evident. Now, so I mean, concrete, you know, I think what it has done for me is really kind of stayed, you know, focused on those future opportunities as ways for especially First Nations and Indigenous people in Canada who choose to participate in energy and choose to make that a part of their self-determined economies, a real opportunity that looks outside of Canada as the primary buyer of our energy.
So we're
also connect with me on LinkedIn. We can have a much deeper conversation.
Yeah, I think so. And I think we're running out of time here, so I'm going to ask Erin. Erin's got her hand up. I'd like to ask her to ask a question, and then I'll hand it over to Sean to pursue the rest of the program if we get there. All right, Erin.
Sure, I'll be quick then. I guess this question is perhaps more for you, Christine, or maybe Sean. It's so wonderful to see so many Indigenous people on this call and hear from everyone's experiences. And I was just wondering if this particular cohort has any sort of thematic orientation, or if, you know, as a cohort, we were selected for a particular reason, and also in terms of like as a group, and also if the trip planned has any particular thematic focus at all, if it's more sort of economic oriented or more cultural. Just curious about that.
I don't think it's just economics or economic in focus, but essentially you people are nominees from the various missions across Canada, the Embassy of Japan, the Consulate Generals across Canada, in the 4 cities that Sean mentioned earlier. And each mission nominates some young professionals who they think are going to be future leaders and can become bridges between Canada and Japan, whether it's economic, cultural, arts focus, political focus. So each mission does their selection. So it's not this year is just Indigenous economics, right? It's the young leaders. And that's why we have an array of people, you know, a diverse group of people here. Yes, we have a lot of Indigenous people this year, which is wonderful to see. I'm really delighted to see this cohort. But we have people from the Jewish Canadian representatives. We have Korean Canadians. And, I served in Korea for 4 years. So I'm always happy to see, Korean Canadians in the group as well. Yes, 감사합니다, right? I spent 4 years as a diplomat in Korea. So we have a diverse group, which is wonderful. And so the part of this program that I think is so good, it's not just about the relationship building with your counterparts in Japan, which is the main purpose, of course, but it's also the collaboration and the networking that you do within your cohort. And hopefully you'll continue to network amongst yourselves and maybe work in groups to continue that relationship with Japan. So it's about networking. How many opportunities would one get if you're in Toronto and meet somebody in Nunavut, right? So I think this program, the focus of it is fantastic. You get to meet other young leaders, professionals from all parts of Canada who you might do business with later on, who you might collaborate and have speak at an event that one of you are hosting. And at the same time, you're going to meet tons of Japanese people and get an introductory course study tour of Japan's economy, politics, culture, food. Japan is a foodie place. I know that a lot of people go to Japan just to eat food because it's, one of its really good characteristics. There's more Michelin star restaurants in Tokyo than in France altogether.
Lots of sushi.
Yeah.
You won't go hungry, is what Christine is saying.
And you're going to eat good Japanese food, I can tell you. So, it's a really exciting program. I wish Canada, I'm a former government employee, so I can say this. I wish that we had such generous programs for others, but I'm really, really grateful. The Asia Pacific Foundation of Canada has been running this program on behalf of the government of Japan for since 2013 now. And I can tell you it's one of the most generous programs we've had the honor and privilege to execute. So with no further ado, I'm going to hand it over now to Sean, and she can take over for the rest of the program. It was a great discussion, everybody. We didn't intend such a long Q&A, but I think it was great. So over to you, Sean.
Yeah, thank you so much, everyone, for your wonderful questions. Our agenda changed a little bit, but I think, agendas are flexible, and I think it was more important for you guys to have a chance to get to know each other a bit and to hear from our alumni tonight. So you've asked some really great questions.
Because Sean is very shy. She lived 14 years in Japan, so she's a real Japan expert, all right? Longer than me.
Yeah, I'll just give you a little bit of information about myself. I first visited Japan when I was 16. I went with my father on a business trip. So he was off doing business things and I was off on my own. And I don't think there are a lot of countries that people would be comfortable letting their 16-year-old daughter run around by themselves, not knowing the language, not knowing anybody. But it was perfectly safe, and I had an amazing experience. And I was there I spent 1 week in Tokyo and 1 week in Osaka. And that was it. Basically, I was hooked. And after that, I studied Japanese in university. After university, I went to Japan for 1 year. The idea was to work and learn the language and then come back to Canada. And 1 year turned into 13 and a half. So eventually I came back. I've been back once since, and I would love to go back again and again and again, but it's very far. But I think Japan is one of those countries that once you visit and experience, you you really come to appreciate it, you know, a lot more than some other places. It really grabs you, and it's the kind of place when you visit personally, it makes an incredible impact. And I'm very jealous of all of you for this wonderful opportunity that you get. And I have never heard anyone say anything but wonderful things about their experiences on the program. The one criticism is, oh, it's too short, but you know, everyone has a job and there's only so much time you can spend. But I'm very confident that you are all going to have an amazing time, and hopefully travel restrictions are lifted, travel advisories are lifted, and hopefully we'll be able to, or you'll be able to go. So we'd like to just take a couple of photos, if that's okay with everyone. If you're not comfortable, you can always turn your camera off. But we'd just like to get a couple of shots of the group as a commemoration. So I think Nanako, are you taking the photos?
Yes, I'm gonna take a screenshot. I have to do several times for first page and second page. So please just smiling virtually.
Claire and Abby.
Oh,
turn
1
your
second.
cameras
Sorry,
on.
I just went to grab my computer charger. 2
Okay.
seconds.
Okay.
I'm not going to show my face myself because I'm looking at different screens. So proud of myself.
Abby, are you there? There you are. And Claire, can you turn your camera on?
Yeah, I just went to go grab my computer charger, but I am back. Okay.
Okay, there you go. Good. Nanako, we're ready.
Great. Hi. Cheese. All right, I took first one. I am saving that. And all right. And now I'm taking second one, guys. All right. Great.
All done. Excellent. Thank you, everyone. Okay, so we are a little bit early. Basically,
I've got a few remarks I'd like to make.
Sure, sure.
So I hope that everybody enjoyed those presentations today. I was inspired by both Faven's. I've heard Faven speak before, so I knew she was an excellent speaker. But Gregory, we're inspired by what you had to say today. And I hope that this was a good opportunity to meet your colleagues and cohorts. And this virtual encounter will hopefully segue into a in-country study tour of Japan for many of you in the spring of 2022, should health and travel restrictions be lifted, of course. I know that you're all excited about the prospects of traveling to Japan now, especially after all you heard tonight, and would like to have more definitive answers on who and when, but I don't have a crystal ball, and neither does Mr. Murata, unfortunately. So we'll just have to ride out the COVID waves for the next little while and hope for the best. We will be in touch with you when we get the green light to proceed with planning, so stay tuned. We will, Sean will be in touch with you as soon as we get the green light. Again, in closing, I'd like to express our sincere appreciation to Mr. Murata of the Embassy, Faven, Gregory, and the staff of the Embassy and Consulate Generals of Japan across Canada. And I'd like to give a special shout out to Sean, who ably and single-handedly organized tonight's session, as well as 3 others that are going to take place in the next week or so. And to Jice for joining us this evening, thank you very much. This is a new word for you, everyone. Otsukare-sama deshita. Thank you for joining us this evening. Take care and have a good night.